Hey, this is Mike Parsley with the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency. What I wanted to do today is give you another tip. Today's tip is about jerkbaits. First things first, there are several makers of jerkbaits, and there are several types of jerkbaits. Each has its place. First of all, there's this jerkbait. This is a megabass jerkbait. I believe this is called a Leviathan, and this jerkbait is made for ultra cold water in the very late winter. So early in January, I throw this, especially on your clearer lakes like Dale Hollow, Thames Ford, and Center Hill. And what you'll want to do with your rod is just pull this bait. You don't really jerk it, even though it's called a jerkbait. You just pull this along with your rod. So you pull and wait. You can wait 30 seconds sometimes, maybe even longer, and just pull again. At some point, if you're throwing this in the right location, the line will just start going off on its own, and that's when you can set the hook. These are good baits to throw along bluff walls, little rock outcroppings on bluff walls late in the winter, early January. Just pull this along the bluff, and this is a good bait for that time of the season. So first one is an ultra cold jerkbait with a longer lip, and you pull them, you don't jerk them. After that, you can start going toward a shallower running jerkbait. This is a megabass 110+1. It gets nowhere near as deep as that Leviathan, but it's got a more erratic action because of the water's getting warmer when you start to throw this. So you can throw this all season long, but I start throwing it a lot more when it gets mid-January all the way through really all the way through spawn. You can throw this up through April, and sometimes even past that, but this is a good bait to use all the way through April. And this gives a more erratic action, although it's still its action is deader than a jerkbait that you're going to want to throw when you get into late February into March and on into April. And this gets a little deeper than you're going to want to throw at that point. What you're going to want to throw when you get into late February, March, and April is this megabass 110. So you'll notice that a megabass 110+1 has a longer bill on it than the megabass 110. That's because this bait runs shallower. That's for when the fish are shallower. So on top of that, the action with this bait is much more erratic than the 110+1, and you actually jerk these two baits. You don't pull them, so you jerk them, and so you'll jerk, and it'll do its erratic action, and don't move it. Just let it sit there, and then you would jerk it again. But you don't want you don't want your line taut when you stop the bait, because if it is taut, it'll continue to pull the lure, and you want the lure to be perfectly still in the water column when you stop the bait. So these two baits you jerk, and make sure you do it on slack line so the bait doesn't continue to move once you've stopped. Along that same line, this is an older jerkbait. It's called an Excalibur jerkbait. This is one of the better baits that I found when you get to a lake like Dale Hollow or Thames Ford or Center Hill that have smallmouth in it. For some reason they like that chartreuse and purple. This is a bait that's got a much more deader action than these megabass, even this megabass 110+1. So this is better when the water is a little bit cooler. So what you want to do is you match the action of the bait to the temperature of the water. So if it's a colder water, you want a deader jerkbait. And so you would jerk this one as well. In the late winter, early January, you can even pull this bait like you would this Leviathan. So if you're dealing with cold water, you can always deaden the action of a jerkbait by just pulling it instead of jerking it. Along those lines, there are a great deal more jerkbaits that you can throw. Strike King, I've always found their jerkbaits to be a lot more pull type jerkbaits, deader action jerkbaits. This is a Stay Z90. You would pull this bait just like you would this Leviathan. You see the bills, you see a bill like that, these baits are more pull type jerkbaits for the cold water. This right here is another Stay Z90. Once again, pull these baits. But overall, jerkbaits have their purpose, and each type of bill has a reason that you're throwing it. And then once you get there, discover which bait is more erratic, which bait has a deader action, which bait suspends for you. You don't want these baits rising or falling. You just want them to stay still in the water column and not move. So get out there and find out which is your favorite jerkbait to throw, and take into account the water temperature as well as the water color when you're deciding what color of jerkbait you're going to throw. If it's clear, you want a jerkbait that is almost clear. If it is muddy or stained, you want to be able to see that jerkbait so the fish can see the jerkbait. So those are my tips today about jerkbaits. Get out there and go fishing.